Unfiltered real talk. And this is where you'll hear it. Uninhibited by the toxic influences of cancel culture. Unvarnished and unfettered. Unencumbered by the censorship of traditional radio. Uncontaminated by big media interests.
And now, Sherman Unlimited.
Hi, it's Peter Sherman, and I know what you're thinking. How can this guy Sherman be such an avant-garde example of counterculture in his advancing years? And oh yes, also so good-looking. I was thinking exactly the same thing. Whatever are you talking about? Sherman, you've established yourself as a right-of-center conservative thinker and admitted as much repeatedly in the public square. All right, so that's true. And then you'd probably say to yourself, how can someone be part of counterculture at the same time as he fesses up to being a right-of-center conservative? The answer is that it's 2022, and I think they have become synonymous, and that I've now come full circle. Let me explain. I spend a lot of my time reading, mostly current events, and bad as it may be for my health, a fair amount of social media too. COVID-19 has changed so much, but some of it has happened in the blink of an eye and been less than obvious. What I'm talking about is the liberal left. The same liberal left that offers us tree-hugging and Trudeau voting. The love your neighbor crowd that's taken on a new, for them, authoritarian mantle and started to demand things of all of us for what they call the common good. Nowhere is this more obvious than with how we are handling COVID, what the government attitude should be about that, who should be vaccinated, and why some rights need to be curtailed. The conservative side is not hollering much about any of that. But the adult versions of the old lefties I know are screaming at the top of their lungs that everyone must be vaxxed and people shouldn't demonstrate and truckers are a bunch of anti-vaxxers supported by people like me. Not so. I simply buy the live and let live concept. Tweets that suggest you are an outlier and having a prime minister who says you're a racist or a misogynist if you refuse to be vaccinated, those things bother me. People seeking to stop or crush a massive demonstration of power by Canada's truckers bother me. 50,000 trucks we hear descending on Ottawa to show Trudeau what his vax mandate rulemaking will do to all of us if he doesn't take a step back. The people doing the talking, as near as I can tell, are the progressives, the very same people who, as aging hippies, still like to think of themselves as free spirits while they've suddenly found that what they want demands speaking in a newfound authoritarian way. I like the word authoritarian because it keeps me from having to use that nasty F word. So, as all of this is happening now, I'm remembering my attending Woodstock as a very young man. Peace and love and smile on your brother. Everybody get together and love one another right now. And in my daily life back then, I thought of more even-handed distribution of our collective wealth that was being generated by our collective efforts. And then I woke up. Or more correctly, I grew up. I discovered that some people are really smart and some people not so much. I found out that some people work hard and some not so much. And I came to see that all people being created equal never meant that all people could share in everything equally regardless of whether they contributed one iota to the collective. And because I thought that way, and do now more than ever, I am considered by some to be right of center and conservative. Well, I am indeed, and I'm proud of that. The idea of taxing something like a home I've bought and paid for through earning its cost with hard work, never having been born into any privilege, well, that's ridiculous. My parents told me we were just little people, their words. So whatever I have is the result of my own efforts because my parents left me nothing. They gave me a good upbringing, and guess what? My parents were liberals. I don't think of that as a bad thing. The differences we have as human beings make us believe in different approaches to life, and we should respect one another's differences. Anyway, here's the main point I want to make. When I was that Woodstock kid, I voted liberal too. And despite that, my parents and their contemporaries thought of me as part of the prevailing counterculture. I protested the Vietnam War. I listened to rock music. I cheered the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show as my parents looked on in stunned amazement. Can you imagine that when you hear a Beatles song today? But I digress. Well, time went on as it always does, and my counterculture morphed into mainstream. Lots of people who were my contemporaries left counterculture behind and themselves became mainstream. Okay, now, if that's true, why do I find my belief system today feeling a lot like counterculture? Counterculture that has returned, and I'm back in it. I don't think about the world as I did 50 years ago. Growing older will do that to you. But many of my contemporaries didn't change much. And now they are the ones presenting the challenge to be normal because they believe we all have to unify in common cause, as defined by them, or be ostracized. If you refuse to be vaccinated, you are denied every privilege we can take away from you. If you are a trucker who feels his or her livelihood is being threatened by so-called common good laws, and you want to demonstrate your dissatisfaction, well, you shouldn't. Or if the mainstream Trudeau followers get their way, you just can't. This represents a major reversal for me. I was for vaccination, and I am 3 times vaccinated myself. I did buy into the idea of segregation of those who refused, and I favored vaccine passports. I admit that I was taken in by the very much touted vaccination as, in essence, a cure in waiting. We'd get these magic shots, and that would be it for COVID. At the time, I was speaking regularly to what ultimately became known as anti-vaxxers. Some were admittedly operating well beyond my ability to comprehend or agree. I was being told variously that COVID was an invention designed to control the world's inhabitants, that there were people who, as part of a significant cabal, were overseeing these injections which were going to insert chips into us or some other microelectronics that would then be activated at a future time through the 5G network. And lots more stuff well beyond all of that horse shit. If they just stuck to the idea that the vaccines were still experimental and might hurt you, I could understand the unwillingness. But they didn't. And I couldn't. But if our general leadership, notably in the sciences, had been widely heard on the issues of transmissibility and whether or not vaccinated people could pass the virus along as easily as unvaccinated people could, and whether it actually were possible to use the new potions to eradicate COVID, many more of us might have listened. To be fair, there were many medical and scientific people telling us just these things, but governments and their health advisors were saying it was nonsensical and cautioning us not to pay attention. Taking their cue from those admonitions were both the mainstream media and social media companies killing stories casting light on the possibility we were not going to eradicate the virus, that these new vaccines might well blunt the severity of COVID, but also might hurt more than a few people, and that being an anti-vaxxer was simply a choice that some people, absent the wild stories, wished to make. And now we can see the truth. The vaccines are not going to erase the virus. Other drugs, some very old ones and very cheap ones, are quite effective in stopping it and preventing death, and that the anti-vaxxers should be neither feared nor ostracized. You prefer to think I'm crazy now too? Well, go ahead. You wouldn't be the first in line. We have many pathogens out there ready to attack and many nasty illnesses that can sicken and kill us. And now 2 years into killing our economies and inflicting immeasurable pain on families and notably young children, the truth is emerging. COVID is just another virus, albeit newer, that can attack us, but we actually have a growing arsenal of tools to fight it. So back to me as a youthful counterculture aficionado, and now me as an aging conservative who once again finds himself inside the counterculture maelstrom. Let me ask a question. Can we just stop all the bullshit right now and get on with living our lives? Can we? I don't know about you, but I feel like I've lost some of the best parts of the last 2 years. At a time of my life when 2 years really matters. If your child were 5 and was prevented from normal preschool activities and socialization for the last 2 years, your child will carry scars throughout life. And if you are older, as I am, having 10 or maybe 20 years to go, that's a real whack at the 10 or 20% of what remains. Open the stores, open the gyms, open the movies, open the arenas, and open the borders. Tell everyone widely and loudly, using all available media, to be personally responsible for themselves and their families. Throw the goddamn vax passports away and let's just get on with life. I'm Peter Sherman.
Sherman Unlimited. In your face.
If you, like most people, have not followed the stock markets or invested in companies listed on those markets, you may well feel that the roller coaster ride you've heard about really doesn't affect you on a direct basis. And that's true. You won't watch those wild swings rip $100,000 away from you or drop $100,000 new dollars into your savings account or $10 or $1 million, so why should you care? The answer is because the markets are a mirror, using financial well-being as the yardstick for how people and the world are reacting to a whole range of events. For that reason alone, you might want to pay attention. When the Dow Jones Industrial Average can plummet a very significant 1,000 points during the 9:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. trading day, but regain it all plus another 100 points in a single trading day, Monday, you should be asking yourself about the stability of the world as reflected in the market mirror. And it's not just the relatively few stocks encompassed by the Dow. It's the NASDAQ, an exchange that is home to tech stocks, Google, Amazon, Tesla, Facebook, to name a few, and the S&P, which is a broader range market for all kinds of stocks that fit there better than a high-power industrial or tech exchange. And that's before looking at the Toronto Exchange or any of the exchanges around the world. They've all been riding a Wonderland roller coaster. And after Monday's experience, Tuesday opened up similarly, and the wild ebbs and flows continue. That's as much of a rudimentary lesson on what the markets are because many, if not most of you, don't care. What you have to care about, however, is what this mirror on the world is showing us. It's saying that we are in a period of moment-to-moment instability. If you follow the news related to the markets, when will COVID really be put on the shelf marked endemic and stop disrupting everyone's life? Will the Russians destabilize the European community and indeed the world by attacking Ukraine? Will the inflationary upward spiral be controlled before you find yourself having to make severe financial decisions impacting your family's life? Where did this all come from? That one's easy. Government printed billions that don't really exist during COVID beyond the paper those dollars were printed on. In other words, they inflated the amount of currency out there, so the value of all currency became diluted. And that's why we call it inflation. And that's why prices rise on everything. In broader perspective, will you ever climb into bed at night and fall asleep feeling happy about your future, safe and confident for the future of your children? These are questions that are largely out of your control, but they are also questions that others will answer for you and for all of us, and where the answers create the great, good, neutral, bad, or terrible situation in which you and your family and all of us must survive and thrive. And you can't answer these questions for yourself, because the actions of others answer them for you, and those answers impact all of us. Parenthetically, does it bother you even a little bit that the people in those decision-making positions have not lost a single penny's pay during the last 2 years? So the stock markets can create rich man, poor man situations, but for most of us, they can tell us what, sadly, we already know. Things are not as good or as stable as they once were. And right now, the smart money predicts they will get worse before they get better. Pay attention to the stock market, whether it hits you directly or not, because one way or another, those swings are describing our lives. I'm Peter Sherman. Find future episodes wherever you find your favorite podcasts or by visiting SHURMANUnlimited.com. So if you like what you heard, tell a friend. If you really liked it, tell 3 friends. If you really hated it, tell 3 enemies. We'll talk again soon.